Demons and Mr. Broadnax, you are in two rooms that are right next to the room I'm in, which I'm in the courtroom conducting this hearing, and we're doing this by computer, as you can see. So everybody is remote and appearing here. I see Mr. Broadnax, you have your attorney with you. So, I believe he's already talked to you, so you understand exactly what's going on. Ms. Demons, your lawyer is participating here as well, long as she's not in the same room with you. She should be on the screen there in front of you. Do you see her?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and mute you so that you don't have to worry about being overheard, but this is a probable cause hearing. I'm going to hear evidence, determine whether or not there's sufficient evidence to bind these charges over or not. And if you have any trouble hearing or seeing what's going on, let the deputy out there know, and we'll get it straightened out. If your lawyer needs to speak with you privately, well, Mr. Broadnax, he's right there, but Ms. Demons, then I can put you in a separate room so that you can have a confidential communication together. All right, so Mr. Lewis, you consent to doing this hearing by Zoom?
Yes, Judge, I do.
All right, thank you. Ms. Lane, do you consent to doing this by Zoom? All right, Mr. Williams?
Thank you, Your Honor. State's witness in this case will be Detective Durham. Sir, if you kindly raise your right hand and take note. Durham, before you take note, it sounds like you're in a wind tunnel right now. Is there something you do to change
It's the fan, I believe, on the laptop. I don't know how to stop that.
We'll muddle through as best we can, but understand we need to get through that white noise, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, with your right hand raised, will you kindly take note? Bear or affirm the testimony you're about to give. The court today shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, what we got.
Yes, sir.
All right, put your hand down. What's your name?
I'm Detective Blake Dunham.
Hang on a second. You've got a, first of all, make sure you don't have any microphones on in your room, the room you're in, other than the
Yes.
one obviously you're speaking on. And then on your volume control knob, you should have a little symbol that shows you where it is. Double click on that and see if that illuminates. See if you can mute yourself and unmute yourself. See if that works.
Okay, how about that, Your Honor?
Well, it's the same thing. You're just going to have to speak up.
Okay, I guess the fan on this laptop is pretty loud, so.
All right, so we can do the best we can here. Detective Durham, you're out warrants against you and Mr. Broadnax.
Yes, sir.
Describe briefly, as best you can, what sort of precipitated those warrants, what gave rise to those warrants?
The injuries that Tamara Broadnax sustained and the duration of time in which those injuries did not receive any kind of medical attention led me to believe that she was neglected any form of medical attention regarding those particular injuries.
Right. So what injuries, you say Miss Broadnax, what's the child's first name?
Tamara.
Tamara Broadnax. What injuries did she sustain?
She was brought in for a right femur injury, and they were describing that as to be a bilateral fracture to the femur. That was approximately 2 weeks.
All right. Let me back up a little bit. She was brought in where?
She was brought in to Scottish Rite in Atlanta.
Right. And they being who? That diagnosed a bilateral fracture to a right femur.
This was Dr. Stephen Messner. He's the child protection physician.
Okay. I cut you off a bit. You said something about 2 weeks. Was the injury done 2 weeks prior to her receiving treatment?
Correct. So Dr. Messner, in his child protective consult report, he listed that the injury to the right femur was approximately in 2 weeks into the healing process. And after x-rays, he located another similar injury to her left femur in a similar spot. That was approximately what he said, in a year to 2 years of the healing process, with no medical knowledge of those injuries.
Was there any evidence of medical intervention on either one of those fractures to her?
No, sir.
Did Dr. Messner have to perform some sort of surgery to repair the bones since they've been healing naturally?
I was told that there was a pending surgery. I'm unaware if that surgery was actually completed or not.
How did the child end up at Scottish Rite?
She was brought there by an uncle, and she contacted her sisters. I'm unaware of their names. I was not able to get a hold of them when I was conducting my investigation. But she was brought in by Kennedy Wilbur, her uncle, and then when she got admitted, he left the hospital.
One of the things I'm curious about is she's at Scottish Rite. Why Gwinnett County Police Department? Why is your agency?
Because they were residing at 3390 Venture Parkway, and that's in Gwinnett County, Georgia. So Dr. Stephen Messner, based off of the length of time that these injuries have been healing in, he determined that if any kind of injury was sustained, it would have been in that time frame that they were living at 3390 Venture Parkway. So with our jurisdiction,
You say they're residing. Who was residing at that address with the child?
this was Miss Monique Demons, Mr. Ithamer Broadnax, Tamara Broadnax, and 3 younger boys, who's Ithamer Broadnax as well, 10 years old, Thomas Broadnax, who's 9 years old, and Trevor Broadnax, who is 8 years old.
Did the hospital observe any other concerning aspects of the child in terms of grooming or education? Any other suspicious aspects of neglect?
Yes, sir. So when she was brought in, she was they located a substantial amount of dried. They weren't able to determine the length that it had been, but they located dried feces in her underwear when she was brought in. She also had an extreme fungus of some sort on her feet. Her feet were flaky and peeling pretty much all over the bottoms of her feet. She was extremely malnourished, underweight, according to Dr. Messner, and she also had a delayed or diminished mental capacity with no diagnosis or indication of any kind of diagnosis of that, but she made indication that she had not remembered the last time that she was in a classroom setting or on virtual learning, because at that time was when they began virtual learning through COVID, obviously, but she was not able to recall any recent schooling.
Okay. Now, we've talked a lot about what the hospital found, but I still don't quite know what you did. Tell me, based on that information, what did you do with that information?
Correct. So Officer Moore, the Gwinnett County Police Department, was the one who responded. She conducted the interviews. I was not able to conduct a forensic interview with her because at the time I was not child certified yet, and she was still admitted in the hospital and pending surgery. I was not able to get her to our sexual assault center called Mosaic, Georgia. So we were not able to conduct a detailed forensic interview. However, Officer Moore conducted a very thorough interview with her, which was on body camera, which I reviewed.
But did you take any steps to identify the child's parent?
Yes, I did. I attempted multiple times to contact them over the phone in order to conduct interviews, at which point I was never able to get a hold of them. I drove to the Extended Stay America at 3390 Venture Parkway to try and make contact with them in person. When I arrived, the room was vacant, and the lady at the register was not able to determine whether they had fled the facility or what if they moved out. She wasn't able to provide me any kind of information regarding their not being here.
Let's go back to the hospital. Did either anyone identify themselves as a child's mother, father, or any kind of guardian ever go to Scottish Rite?
The mother or father did not ever go to Scottish Rite, Officer Moore was able to get Mr. Ithamer Broadnax over the phone. I was not able to hear that conversation other than him requesting why law enforcement was involved.
Did you conduct research to find out who Mr. Broadnax, to confirm Mr. Broadnax or Miss Demon's identity? Look for poking photos, driver's license photos, that sort of thing?
Yes, correct. So I obtained both Mr. Broadnax and Miss Demon's identifying information from a relative, Clintona Daniel, and I was able to receive driver's license photos based off of that information. Received those from our GCIC department.
The person you see the driver's license photo for I'm going to pronounce it Ithamer, but I don't know. Broadnax. The person on your screen today?
Yes, I do.
And the person,
Yeah, I identified him as a male with the glasses and a green shirt, or an orange shirt, I'm sorry.
thank you. And Miss Monique Demons, based on her driver's license photos, do you see that person today?
Yes, sir, I do. She's also wearing an orange shirt with her hair pulled back and a ponytail.
Did the child in this case identify Miss Demons as her mother and Mr. Broadnax as her father?
Yes, she did, to Officer Moore, when she responded.
But the last thing, we talked about a particular address. You said that based on the injuries, that's where you your family was residing. Help me understand that injury in that location.
Tamara had attempted to explain in detail to Officer Moore the injury to her right femur, which was the more recent fracture. She explained that she was trying to get off the floor in the living room of that extended stay room. There was a radiator near the window unit where she was seated on the floor, and she said that she tried to use her arm to kind of assist her up off of the floor, and her arm slipped off, and she fell back down to the floor, and that was how she explained that she sustained the femur fracture to the right hip.
And that address that you went to go locate the family at, is that the same one where she said that radio was located at?
Yes, sir.
Were you able to find out at all about anything where the left femur was, where that fracture occurred?
She was not able to remember in detail where the location exactly was that she sustained that injury. She did say that she remembered it being on a playground approximately around the time of 2019. She fell on a playground, sustaining that shoulder injury to the hip.
Let's go back to the right femur, the more recent of the two injuries. Did she explain to you any sort of medical interventions at all that happened?
She said that she was supplemented by Ms. Demons. She said she was supplemented with some kind of pain medication that she was only able to describe as a blue pill. She was supplemented with pain patches. As she explained, were just sticky patches that were applied on the site of the injury, and a sleeping medication to assist her in sleeping at night due to the pain.
Do you know where the child is right now?
She's still in DPEC's custody.
What's that, I think?
Oh, I guess he said no. All right, who wants to go first?
I'd like to, Judge.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon. Is it Detective Dunham?
Yes, sir. Dunham.
Thank you, Detective Dunham. I may have missed this. How old is the child?
Tamara is 11 years old, or was 11 years old at the time.
11 years old, okay. And she indicated that the injury to her hand happened at the hotel. Is that right?
There was no injury to the hand that I'm aware of.
I thought you said injury to her finger, or was it her femur?
Femur, yes.
Femur, okay. So one femur, which is, I think, the bone in the leg. Is that right?
Correct.
one injury happened at the hotel to one of the femurs, and one injury happened at the playground. Is that right?
Correct. I'm not aware of which playground. She was not able to describe that.
Okay, that's fine, but the child, 11 years old, never indicated that either one of the parents ever spanked her or beat her or injured her. Is that right? Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely not. No, she gave no indication of physical abuse.
Okay, and of course, she's in defects. Are the other children also in defects?
They were placed with Miss Clintona Daniels, who I was told was a relative to Miss Dean.
Okay, I'm assuming that the children were interviewed shortly before being placed with her or after being placed with her. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Okay, did any of those children indicate that any time that either one of the parents had they thought injured the child that issued the 11-year-old?
No, sir. Not at all.
Okay, and none of those children had indicated that they themselves, the other children, were injured by my client or his wife. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, did the 11-year-old indicate that she was staying at the extended hotel with her parents?
That's correct.
This is the biological parents, is that right?
That's correct.
And although you didn't interview, but you did see on body cam her interview, were you left with the impression that the parents were struggling economically? Were you left with that impression?
At that time, I did not know any of their financial situations or any kind of economic.
That's fine. Did the child indicate how long they had been staying at the extended stay hotel?
No, sir. She was not even able to tell me her birthday.
Okay. The child did indicate, although she wasn't able to tell you her birthday, and she wasn't able to tell you where she may have sustained the injury at the park, she was able to tell you about her schooling. Is that right?
Very little.
Okay. Did she indicate to you what grade she thought she might be in?
She said the last time she remembers was she was in 4th grade.
4th grade. Did she indicate the school?
No, she did not.
Did she indicate what month she actually was in 4th grade? I'm assuming going to a brick and mortar school. Did she indicate where that school was?
No, sir, she didn't.
Did she indicate what month she had attended that school?
No, sir.
Did she indicate if she had done any schooling online at all with the computer?
She said that she had not, and that her 3 younger brothers were conducting telephonic schooling.
Okay, so the other children were doing some schooling, but to the best of her recollection, she was not. Is that right?
That's correct.
Did you ever speak to my client, Mr. Broadnax?
No, sir. I attempted on numerous occasions to contact them over the phone and in person.
That's fine. Did you speak to his wife?
No, that's the same scenario, sir.
Let me ask you this question. What number did you try to reach Mr. Broadnax at? Do you have that in front of you?
I don't have it at my immediate disposal, no, sir, but I mean, it's in my investigator report.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine. Where did you get that number? Did you get that number from the 11-year-old who couldn't remember what part she had injured herself, or did you get that from someone else? Where did you get the number that you were calling when you were trying to reach Mr. Broadnax and his wife?
Yes, sir. I was given that by Mrs. Sherry Hyde. She's a social worker at Scottish Rite.
Okay, do you know how she got that number?
Yes, from the phone call that came in after, I guess, he had realized that she was admitted in the hospital.
Okay. And best you can tell, the double hearsay, triple hearsay is fine. I just need to understand when you got that number.
Sure.
Who was it that you understood had called the hospital?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding your question.
Our question, you indicated that you got the number from someone else when someone else called into the hospital. Who was the someone that called into the hospital?
Mr. Ithamer Broadnax.
Okay, Mr. Broadnax, so it's your understanding that my client had called into the hospital and had left a telephone number with someone, is that right?
I don't know if he left the telephone number, if it was a caller ID of some sort. Miss Sherry Hyde.
And that's what I want to make sure of, because it's certainly possible that he had called in from a number off of somebody else's cell phone or pay phone. They took down that number, and when you call back, he wasn't at that number. Is that fair to say?
That's possible, yes.
That's possible, right, sure. Have you ever received any, I'm gonna call it a good telephone number from either the children or the children's emergency contact at whatever school they've been attending? Have you ever received a good contact number from Mr. Broadnax?
I was given, the phone number that I was given from Mrs. Hyde. I tried to confirm with, Miss Clintona Daniels. Those phone numbers, I do recall, did match. However, I was not able to achieve anybody on the other one.
Okay, that's fine. Did you get any information? You indicated that the child, the 11-year-old, was brought to the hospital by an uncle, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, did you get any information about how she came into contact with the uncle?
She had explained that they were having a birthday party or a family gathering of some sort. Her movement, as she explained, is very limited. So she was in the main area of whichever location that she was not able to provide me. And Mr. Kennedy had noticed that she was in pain and her range of motion was extremely limited. And that's what caused them to bring her to the hospital.
So they're at a family gathering, everyone, the whole family, the other 3 kids and my client and his wife and the 11-year-old, is that right?
Correct, and some older sisters as well that I was not able to get any kind of information on.
Okay.
I was aware that there were multiple siblings.
Okay, the uncle then takes her to the hospital, and if I understand you correctly, he then leaves. He doesn't stay at the hospital with her, is that right?
That's correct, he left.
Okay, do you know how long he stayed at the hospital before he left?
I do not.
Do you know how long the child was at the hospital before my client called the hospital to check on him?
I do not. I just know that when Officer Moore was given the call from the social worker at Scottish Rite to respond, when Officer Moore arrived to Scottish Rite, there were no family members present.
Okay. Do you, from the interview, were you able to tell if my client, from the interview with the 11-year-old, were you able to tell if my client and or his wife had any type of personal vehicle, if they had their own personal vehicle?
No, I was relayed information that they do not have any kind of vehicles that are personal. I was relayed that Mr. Broadnax had some sort of work-related vehicle with Xfinity, but I was told that there was no personal vehicle. Okay, so you understood that, as best you could tell from the 11-year-old and whomever else you spoke to, the mother and the father are staying at an extended stay hotel, and neither one of them have a personal vehicle. Is that right? That's correct.
Okay. And you didn't have any other address for him, is that correct?
That's correct.
And although you may have had a good cell phone number, you only had one cell phone number, is that right?
That's correct. I was not able to obtain any other phone numbers that were direct to them.
And based on your interview or DFAC's interview or someone's interview with the remainder of the children, really one count of cruelty to children was brought for, I'm going to say, neglect or failure to get medical attention earlier than what somebody thought they should have gotten medical attention. Is that fair to say?
That's correct, for neglect.
Okay, all right. I don't have any further questions. Thank you, Judge.
Wayne?
Thank you, Your Honor. Did you interview Mr. Kennedy?
I did over the phone.
Did he indicate how long the minor child was with him?
I'm sorry, it's difficult to...
Did he indicate how long that Tamira was with him?
No, he did not.
Did you get an indication of how long she was with them during the party, prior to the party? How long she was with them prior to being brought to the house?
No.
Did you inquire?
Yes. It was very difficult to get any kind of information during this case.
Who did you inquire with?
Mr. Kennedy.
So you asked Mr. Kennedy how long they had with Tamara and he was unable to tell you?
I asked how long they were at the location before they realized that she needed medical attention.
Okay. Now, did he indicate how she was in their custody without the parent?
No. I was under the impression that the parents were at this gathering as well.
And you basing that on what?
Statements from Mr. Kennedy.
Okay.
As well as,
now, the injury she sustained, is it only the two injuries, one to the left femur and the one to the right femur?
there was concern. Dr. Messner had concern of two large scars that were on her back. After his consult and her statements regarding those two large scars on her back, I found no correlation to any kind of abuse or neglect. The statements that she provided were very consistent with Dr. Messner's consult.
Okay. Now, the location on the femur where she had the injury, was there any bruising or anything that would indicate that there was any type of injury?
As far as, are we talking as far as the physical abuse or just indication that there was an injury there?
They were arrested for medical neglect for not having the injury to the femur treated earlier, correct?
That's right.
Okay, the injuries on the femur, were there any visible bruising or swelling or anything shown in the femur area?
No bruising or any kind of swelling of that kind. The only thing that Dr. Messner was able to find regarding the injury was the fact that her left leg was canted outward. It was rotated at kind of at a 45 or so degree angle outward. So that led him to believe that there was an injury on that side.
The birthday party she was attending, was it a child's birthday party?
Again, I'm
was it a
unaware
child's
of.
birthday party?
Again, I'm unaware of the actual reason for the gathering or the family getting together. I was only told that she believed it was a party of some sort.
Okay. Did Tamara indicate what she was doing at the time she was having difficulty moving around?
She said that she, for the most part, remains on the couch that's in the living room of the residence. She has what she described as a rolling chair for transportation throughout, seated in what I'm assuming she described as a desk chair with wheels on the bottom.
Did she describe it as like a desk chair, or you just assumed that's what she might have been referencing when she said it was a rolling chair?
The way she described it was a rolling chair similar to a desk chair.
Did she say similar to a desk chair? Is that what you deduced from her being in a rolling chair?
From her, what now? I'm sorry.
Did she state it was similar to a desk chair?
She stated that it was a rolling chair. Now, she didn't, when Officer Moore asked if it was a wheelchair, she was not able to confirm that it was similar to a wheelchair. She just said that it was a chair, an upright chair with wheels.
So it's fair to say that the chair she was in could have been a wheelchair, but she was unable to provide the description or the name of the chair as being a wheelchair.
Correct.
Okay. One moment, please. You indicated there was dry feces in her underwear.
Correct?
Was it, I guess for lack of a better term, like a skid mark or something of that nature?
No, ma'am. There were the bottom part of the underwear that she was wearing and some dried flakes around her, around where she was seated in the hospital bed. There was dried flakes of it all in her underwear.
And that could have been from her improperly wiping herself.
Yes.
How long was she at the hospital before you all were contacted?
I'm unaware of the duration at Scottish Rite. I do know that she was brought to Gwinnett Medical, Lawrenceville first, and they referred her to Scottish Rite due to her age and the injuries themselves.
And I don't know if you specified this earlier. Do you know where they were located during this family gathering?
No, she was not able to describe the location.
Did she indicate whose home they were at?
No, she was not able to describe the location.
And so, just to be clear, Ms. Demons and Mr. Broadnax were arrested because of some unexplained injuries. Well, they weren't unexplained. The injuries were explained that occurred to the both femurs, but it was determined that the parents did not seek medical attention.
That's correct, due to the duration of time without any kind of medical attention and the supplementing of pain medication.
When did Samira indicate she had the incident at the hotel room when she attempted to get up and her hand slipped and she fell down, hurting her femur?
She stated that it was approximately 2 weeks, but she was not able to. It was very hard to get any kind of time frames from her.
And the other injury, the 2017 injury, that injury was healed.
It was a 2019. She stated it was a 2019 injury, and Dr. Messner said that was well in advanced stage of healing.
So it was well in the advanced stage of healing, but it had not healed completely.
I'm unaware if it was healed completely, but it was in a year at least of healing.
Do you know what her weight was at the time that you responded to the call?
It's in the CPC report that Dr. Messner completed. I don't have it on hand, but it is in the report as well as the CPC report that Dr. Messner completed.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Any redirect as to either, Mr. Williams?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
And none for Mr. Lewis or for
No.
Ms. Knight?
Thank you, Judge. No questions.
Okay. Mr. Williams, what is the story on this improper passing citation?
You have to tell me, because my calendar shows a warrant in 8711 against Mr. Broadnax and a warrant 8712 against Ms. Stevens. I don't know the citation.
I just got a recorder's cord improper passing of stationary emergency vehicle. So I assumed it was related to.
I am not prepared to produce evidence as to that. I'll submit.
Okay. So, any evidence, I take it no evidence from Mr. Lewis or Ms. Lane?
Judge, respectfully, I'm gonna call my client.
You're going to call your client?
I am, Judge.
Okay, are you gonna have evidence, Ms. Lane? Sorry?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, Mr. Lewis, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Broadnax. Raise your right hand. You swear affirm the testimony provided this afternoon in the case of State of Georgia versus Ithamer, Broadnax will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so be done. Put your hand down. Okay, I need to
Mr.
tell
Lewis,
you.
before you get going, can I ask Detective Dunham to turn off his sound so we can mute that and be easier to hear for everybody?
Good idea.
Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, good. There's two things I need to tell you. One, the hearing today is being recorded. It's going live on YouTube. It's also going to be recorded. It's going to be posted on YouTube. And because of that, the prosecutor is able to have access to it at a later time. If in fact you say something that's not truthful and they want to prosecute you for that. Do you understand that? So you've sworn to tell the truth, but if you don't tell the truth, the prosecutor can prosecute you for perjury. You understand that? If you do tell the truth, whatever you say can be used against you later on, even though you haven't been read your rights, because although you're in custody, you are voluntarily submitting to the questions that I'm going to put to you right now. Do you understand that? Now, the law says you don't have to testify. I'm calling you to testify, but if you disagree, you say, nah, I'm not really feeling it today. My tummy, my throat, my hairline, whatever. You don't want to testify. You don't have to testify. But if you do testify, you're going to have to answer the prosecutor's questions, Tom Williams, if he has questions for you. Do you understand that? Some of this is about trust. I think you should testify, which is why I'm calling you. I don't call you just to be experimenting with your life. I've got a bunch of trials and I don't need to establish any reputation. So I'm not calling you because I need to prove anything to anybody. I think it's in your best interest to testify. You understand that? Okay, good. Is it your desire to testify?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. We're going to go with, what's your name first? How old are you?
Get
Yes,
a
Judge.
little closer to the microphone, please.
Sure. How far have you gone to school?
I have 2 years of college.
Are you married to the person that appears in jail court video number 3?
No, we've been together 15 years.
15 years, and you and her are biological mother and father of the child at issue that's 11 years old. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When did you first understand that there was an issue going on with your daughter, that you thought that she was injured? When was the first time you had information in regards to that?
Approximately a week or two before, it's actually a cousin and an uncle took to the hospital. It's approximately a week or two before then.
Okay, that's fine. And when did you understand that she had gotten injured?
In the hotel room, and she had said, get off the air condition. She was leaning on the air condition and slipped and fell.
Okay.
And I was thinking,
Okay, listen, take it easy, take a deep breath. You won't be able to swing the bat and hit a 5-run home run. That's not how it works. So just one hit at a time. You understand that? Okay, good. Why didn't you take it to the hospital then?
One time COVID-19 just hit. And I was news was saying the hospital was probably one of the most dangerous spots to go to. And I didn't know what was going on with COVID-19. Remember, the world had seemed to stop right before my eyes. I didn't want to take my daughter to the hospital and she contract the deadly disease that I didn't know anything about. I asked her about these things. Put her to the hospital, baby. I want to try to sit down. I think it's not that bad. I think I'm going to be okay. I said, okay, I'm not a doctor, baby, but I got to go to work tomorrow anyway to keep us inside. So, and cold is going on. We got to keep on pushing as a family and stay inside.
Okay, good. You was there.
Yes, sir.
How long?
Approximately maybe 3 months.
Okay, where were you staying at before that?
Another estate upstate hotel.
Okay, good. You indicated that you had to go to work.
I'm having trouble hearing the question, Mr. Lewis.
All right, Judge. You indicated that you were trying to keep a roof over your head. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's fine. What was going on economically for you? Where were you at?
Well, we're paying for the room by the day. So if we didn't pay for that day, we didn't stay. So I had to make money every day at work to make sure we paid for our rooms, we stay inside as a family. I work at a company called Affordable Electronics. No car and no driver license. No, sir.
You heard some talk about somebody working for Infinity or Xfinity. Did anybody have a card You and your wife do now?
No, sir, I just got my license back in, November this, like 2020. I've never had a work vehicle.
How did you get to the birthday party?
The birthday party was my son's party. My sons, Trevor and Thomas, are twins. They're both right now 9 years old. They're twins. Their birthday was on the 30th of April. We had a party for them at the hotel room where we lived at. Had a little party where we could afford some pieces of balloons and the free toys we were able to afford.
And I'm assuming that one of the family members came over?
Yes, Wilbur, which is her cousin, he's in the medical field. I asked him, and my wife asked him, can he check it out, because we weren't sure how bad it was and how to proceed with that. Because at first she was getting around on it, but then as time went on, it's like it was getting a little worse. And with the COVID going on, we didn't know what to do. So we were trying to decide what to do at that point, and how to get our daughter some help so she could be okay.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And how long did she stay at the hospital with her?
He stayed in the hospital. All the evening until his wife came over there. Until his wife came and took over. Somebody stayed in the hospital with her the whole time. And I called continually to see how my daughter was doing. I was very concerned about my daughter. I called continually since she got there. But I still had 3 more kids at home and my wife at home to make sure the kids were safe. So they my room to stay inside. We cannot stay at the hospital. So
What number?
I called from 470-542-0216. My cell phone number. No, sir, she did not.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. When did you find out that there was a problem?
I spoke, as I called, continued to call the hospital. At one point, maybe the second day, the hospital social worker, Miss Sherry, told me that she's not allowed to talk to me about the case that has been turned over to the detectives in Gwinnett County. I said, do you know the detective's name? She said, no. I can't give you any more information concerning her. That's the last I heard about that.
And when did this happen? When was she taken to the hospital? When was the day of the birthday party?
The boy's birthday is on April 30th, and she might have taken to the hospital on May 1st, maybe, or May 2nd, somewhere. I don't know the exact date, but it was really close to that date.
Okay, May 1st or May 2nd, which was the day of the party, is that right?
The party was on the 30th, so maybe the next day.
Okay, good. And because the warrant says May 5th it says between May 5th of 2019 and May 5th of 2020. So we'll assume for a moment May 5th of 2020, that was approximately the date that they went to the hospital, is that right? It was last year.
Yes, sir. That was last May.
Yeah, 2020. Now,
2020, yes, sir.
now, I know there was COVID going on, so was it your understanding that the male cousin stayed at the hospital with her?
Yes.
Even with the COVID restrictions?
Well, he was actually a COVID employee. He does COVID great. He's a respiratory therapist great, so he deals with COVID.
Okay, so you think he was able to stay there, and then his wife replaced him when she came there?
At my wife's request, yes.
Okay.
They asked somebody, she had to stay with the boys, can somebody stay with her in the hospital?
Okay, but you couldn't stay there either way because of COVID.
I ain't work.
Yeah, but even if you had $1 million, you wouldn't have been able to stay there because of COVID. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna let the prosecutor down there, Tom Williams, ask some questions. He might have some questions for you.
Mr. Broadnax, I didn't get your phone number. What number did you use to call the hospital?
470-542-0216.
0216. All right. So if we check the records for the hospital, we're going to see lots of calls from that number. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
You didn't use any other number to call, right?
I might have maybe the hotel room phone number, but mainly my phone number that I use. Yeah, my main phone number. Yes.
All right. Is back in May of 2020, back in the COVID, was your daughter enrolled in school anywhere?
No, sir, she was not. But we was trying to get the homeschool started, and the defects were of the situation.
Okay. What was the last school she was enrolled in?
She was East Simpson. If I'm not mistaken, East Simpson over off Peachtree Parkway.
All right. Back in May of 2020, were your boys enrolled in school?
No, sir.
What was the last school the twins went to?
Beaver Ridge. Elementary school.
Why weren't they in school?
Well, as living in a hotel, we got evicted several times from different hotels. When you get evicted, the school bus does not come pick up the hotel the next day. So we have problems finding another stable hotel that we can afford to live in.
Okay.
And the steady state was finding what we could afford to live in, that we've been there for a period of time to get the school back started. And I seen they would allow us to stay there and pay by the day. But sometimes I had to pay late, so I didn't have the money at time and checkout time. So that created a problem for us staying other hotels. It made us have to move several times.
All right.
You understand? Me too fast.
I got it, Mr. Broadnax. I got it. You got 2 twins. You got 2 other boys. How old are those boys?
No, I only have 3 boys.
3 boys. All right. How's the other one?
Ithamer.
How old is he?
Ithamer is 11 right now.
11. Okay. Does your daughter, when she was in school, she get special education services of any kind?
Yes, sir.
All right. Tell me about this feces. The officer says that there's dried flakes of feces in her underwear. What's that about?
Well, I'm a father. I have no clue of that. I have no clue. I know sometimes my little boys, when I do the laundry, I see feet, boo stains in their underwear. I mean, I'm not sure about you, but it happened to me before I was young too. So
You've never had a problem with her defecating on herself, having accidents in her panties. Is that right?
no.
Okay. What about the fungus on her feet? Didn't you see she had some real problems on her feet?
I didn't see the phone on the feet.
Okay, you didn't know about that.
What ashy? You know what ashy means? Like they have lotion?
I know what ashy means. I got it.
Okay.
But you didn't think of it. You didn't think there was a problem. Is that right?
No, sir, not at all.
How about your daughter wheeling herself around? Is it a wheelchair or a desk chair we've been talking about?
It was a desk chair.
Desk chair. Okay.
We used it to help her get to the bathroom when her leg would start hurting, when her started hurting worse, and she didn't want to put pressure on her, usually get to the bathroom back and forth.
Okay. And you weren't concerned that your daughter was in such pain she couldn't walk to the bathroom?
I was very concerned, but I was also concerned about the COVID going on, and also concerned about our roof over our head. So I had a lot of serious concern going on at the same time.
Did you ever think maybe you should call the fire department and have them come take a look at her and see how things are going?
I tried to reach out to our family when they was over there to see if they help us out with it, see what he thought, and go from there.
You would agree with me that she fell off that radiator or air conditioner a week, maybe 2, before your family came to look at her, right?
Yes, sir.
And your family was already there for your twins' birthday party when you asked them to look at that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Now, after you found out your daughter was at the hospital and you found out the police were involved, did you ever think maybe you wanted to find out who was looking into the case so you could talk to them?
I attempted several times. Through our attorney, Brian Condone. We had several defects hearings after the incident.
Well, my question is, next, did you ever call the police department to volunteer to come in and talk about this case?
Yes.
Okay. And did you call from 470-943-0216 to do that?
I guess yes, I'm sure I did. But first of all, I didn't know what number to call. I tried to call the number, any number I could find for the 10. I didn't know who to call. So.
You ever heard of 911?
No.
Okay. Now, when the police went to that hotel, you weren't there. You all had moved out. What's that about? Where'd you gone?
Evicted.
Okay. Well, my question is, where'd you go?
To another hotel I could afford.
How was your daughter ever going to find you if you all got evicted and she didn't know where to find you? What was the plan to get you?
We spoke with the family every day.
You talked to who every day?
The family, Katina Daniels, our caseworker, Miss Martin, every day, and the boys every day.
So defects knew where to find you this whole time?
Yes, we had continuous defects meetings all the way up until October.
What happened in October?
What do you mean what happened in October?
Well, you said you had daily meetings with them.
I mean, we had meetings all the way, we found out we had the warrant in October.
And then in October, what'd you do in October when you found out about a warrant?
I tried to find, see, I turned myself in and see what was the next process, but actually, I was scared. I didn't know what to do. That point.
When did you actually get arrested, sir?
February 2nd.
So,
February 1st.
you knew about this warrant in October, and
October 31st. I think that's, maybe, yeah.
okay, and you were, we could say you were on the run that whole time till recently, is that right?
If you want to call that, I mean, I spoke with the caseworker since then too, so let me go back a little bit. I spoke to our caseworker all the way up until we had a court hearing on, November 23rd. A Zoom court hearing with the caseworker through DFACS. And I spoke to the caseworker before Christmas, spoke to her after Christmas, so I've always been in trust with the caseworker.
Where were you arrested at, sir?
On Peachtree Parkway, Peachtree Industrial Road.
What got you arrested? How'd the police know you were there?
I got pulled over.
So you were driving a car?
During the time my kids were with Atlanta, I got my driver's license back, I got a car, we had a car, we was in Atlanta ready, preparing to turn ourselves in.
Whose car were you driving?
Our car.
You got up enough money to buy a car then, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But now it's probably told and told, but we lost it, but we did have one at a time, yes, sir.
Okay, that's all I got. Thank you, sir.
Redirect Mr. Lewis.
No.
And Ms.
So
Lane.
I followed the chronology, Judge, and I'll deal with everything else in argument. I don't know if co-counsel has a question.
Okay, Ms. Lane, do you have anything? You're muted.
I'm sorry, I don't have any questions now.
Okay. Let's see. You have no more evidence, Mr. Lewis? Okay, and Ms. Lane, you don't have any evidence besides questions for, Mr. Broadnax?
I don't have any questions and I have no, evidence.
Okay. So, I guess, I'll take, argument if you want to start, Mr. Lewis.
Judge, respectfully, one of the things I learned, I want to say it was 1989 when I joined the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children as an investigator. They said that you have to be able to determine where you think there's neglect, the difference between economic and intentional. And I think that's exactly what's going on here. In May of 2020, in the middle of COVID, the child has an injury. My client doesn't quite know what to do. Obviously, money is short. He doesn't have a car then. He doesn't get a car till November. And I think the court has followed the chronology. It's May. They don't quite know what to do. The child seems like she's getting around. She's not in school. She's not in school, one, because there really is no in-person school in May 2020. But they haven't been able to get stable. And so when they get put out of one hotel and they go to another hotel, you've got to go back to the school and get the child re-registered. But there's no in-person schooling. So the normal things that the court would be able to use, the fact that the child's not in school, those are things that the court really can't, I don't think that the court can fairly use those things in the middle of COVID to say that the parents were somehow being.
Yeah, and I'm not too much thinking about those, but I'm very much thinking about, getting around on an office chair for 2 weeks.
I don't think that was happening for 2 weeks, Judge, based on the testimony. I was left with the impression that did happen, and that the child was making her way from the bed to the bathroom on a few occasions. I don't think that was going on for 2 weeks. I think that the testimony was that, from the detective, that the parents were trying to use different pain patches and things of that nature as they were communicating with the child about pain, when they in fact had a chance to talk to the family member who was most informed about medical. That's
When the family member, I mean, maybe it wasn't 2 weeks, maybe it was 1 week.
Maybe it was 3 days, right?
Well, yeah, the testimony I heard was between 1 and 2 weeks, so.
Fair enough.
So, you know, I can see an overnight where you're monitoring to see what we're dealing with, that kind of thing. The cousin, as it turns out, he showed up for a birthday party. Not when, hey, there's a problem, come over and check it out, but for a birthday party.
That's That's right, I understand that, Judge, and I suspect that the child's complaints may not have been, all the time. And I understand we're talking about a neglect case, and listen, and this one of the things, it's difficult for me to attack the detective, because I think the detective has to go based on what he's hearing from the child. It's not an abuse case, it's a neglect case. And so he has to make the determination, and of course the court, I think, has to make its own independent determination based on the evidence. Does the court think that it's neglect? Obviously, I'm gonna make my argument, the court's gonna make its ruling. My position is that given all of the economic forces at play, the lack of car.
Well, that's the reason that I highlight these things, because I hear you loud and clear about the economic pressures, and I'm envisioning it, and I think that's material, and it just, as a practical matter, has to have an impact on what you're able to do as a parent. And it's not necessarily, I mean, what might be negligent in a situation where you're not, resource poor, may not be negligent in a situation where you're very much resource poor. So I completely understand that. That's why I'm focused on things like how long somebody, a child is dealing with a broken femur, which is, I mean, that's not a, maybe it's an injury, let's sleep on it and see how it does. It's a broken femur.
And I understand that, Judge. Unfortunately for me, I didn't hear anything about a compound fracture. There's no bones sticking out of skin, but I understand that she may, in fact, have a hairline fracture. She may have a fractured femur, which obviously the doctors have diagnosed. I think the other important thing, Judge, is post the child going to the hospital, parents aren't hiding. Now they may not have been able to get in touch with the detective may not have been able to get in touch with them, but they're still speaking to the state. Now, obviously, I know, and you know, and the other lawyer knows, you speaking to DFACS has nothing to do with you speaking to the law enforcement, because DFACS and law enforcement may not be communicating with one another. But I don't know that my client understands that. But as far as they're concerned, the state is the state, whether the state is law enforcement with the gun and the badge, or the state is DFACS, or the state is IRS, or the federal government, for them it's all the same. So they're still having contact. They're not hiding. They're still having contact with DFACS. So DFACS knows exactly where they are. Listen, this is not a question of blaming the detective or blaming DFACS. I only point this out to say they're not hiding. They haven't dumped their child and ran off someplace. They're still actively engaged with the other children. They're still actively going to DFACS, and I'm assuming that's the reunification. My clients indicated to the court that he was going to hearings in November. He was going to hearings in December. So when the prosecutor says he's hiding how? You don't hide by going to DFACS hearings. You don't hide by appearing, even if you're not physically going because of COVID. They can still ask you for your address. Where are you physically at right now? The client's not saying, "Oh, I'm not going to tell you where my address is. Catch me if you can." So yes, I certainly understand that once he found out that there was a warrant, let's call it November 1st. He didn't run in to turn himself in during Thanksgiving or Christmas. He just got a car. He's just trying to get everybody's feet up underneath him. But I think that the court has to look at what's going on after the child went to the hospital in order for the court to say, okay, the prosecutor said he's fleeing, he's hiding. That's exactly the opposite of what he's doing. And obviously the court will determine if his behavior with DFACS and his cooperating with DFACS and his calling on his cell phone the number of times that he says he's called, which is now under oath, and we don't have anything to dispute that right now. The court has to determine, does that indicate an intentional neglect back in May of 2020? I think that's ultimately what the court has to determine. These aren't easy determinations. This is not a clear-cut case. I understand that this could go either way. But obviously what we're arguing is when you look at the totality of the situation with the economics and the COVID and the situation that he was in, I think it's easy to see how the child got caught in a situation where the parents did not intentionally neglect the child. And that's where I'm arguing that the charge should be dismissed. Thank you.
Ms. Lane?
Brianna, what I heard in the testimony, and and I could be slightly off, when Mr. Broadnax testified, with the question as being posed, he was aware that there was an injury that had occurred 2 weeks prior to. And that was because she had fallen and had hurt herself, and she said, I'm fine, I'm fine. Over time, and as we got closer to the date of the family gathering of the party, that's when he noticed that she was struggling to get around, and he gave her a chair so she can get back and forth. But, the issue was, okay, we have COVID, do we, bring her to the hospital, we risk, COVID, people are dying, and it's really, we're in a severe pandemic at this point. Do we bring her to the hospital with COVID? At the time of the injury, mom gave her some, pain medication, and there was no swelling, nothing, protruding. And so there was no indication that there was a severe injury, but there was an indication at some point, she was getting, it was more complicated for her to get around, and Dad, realized, hey, something's wrong. So as soon as he, the cousin comes there who's in the medical field, Dad says, hey, I need your help. He reaches out to the family. She's, struggling. And he asks for advice. And so the cousin takes her to the hospital. Then we learn, they learned that she has a fractured femur or something that's going on that's not visible from the outside. Other than the fact that she was just kind of started struggling at some point along the way with getting around. So it didn't sound to me that she was having a difficulty for 2 weeks. It just sounded that as while she was on her leg walking around for some period of time, that she started having difficulty because of the pressure that she was placing on her leg. And it sounded to me that it was more noticeable, like within the 3 days prior to the party and them actually seeking medical attention through the family members. And they did seek medical attention through the family members. And even with Mr. Williams asking about, the feces on the bed, the Dunham said it appeared that it could have been that she just did not wipe herself correctly. So it wasn't where, there was no testimony that the clothes was filthy, she was dirty, dirt under the skin or anything like that. If we're talking about, neglect as far as caring for the child. We also have 3 other kids that were in the household that apparently, we can infer that they were all healthy because they were not taken into care, and there was no evidence or any testimony from Detective Dunham or anyone that the state hasn't presented anyone to testify that, okay, this is kind of a systemic neglect in a household because you have all experience of neglect. We have a child that had an injury that fell off of, fell down a playground in 2019, sustained an injury to her right femur, or left femur, and then, in May of last year, at some point, or mid-April, she sustained an injury to the other femur. And it may be some concerns with, bone issue or something that she may be more prone to injuries, but certainly that's something that they'll work out with DFACS, because it is my understanding also that they are working out a plan for reunification. But I think as far as what's presented today and what the court has to consider today, that there's insufficient information to say that they were neglected medically or otherwise by these parents.
Okay, Mr. Williams, anything further on this question? And maybe you can answer for me before you get cranked up. The children are, of course, the parents are both in custody now and have been since February 1st or 2nd. So the children, where were the children? I probably heard this and lost track of it. Between, well, I mean, the event the events that precipitated all this was in May 5th or something like that. And then the parent, at least the father, became aware of the warrant sometime in November, and then there was an arrest on February 1st or 2nd. From May to February 1st, where have the children been?
That is a question I cannot answer for your honor. There's been no evidence as to that question.
Well, when the warrant was issued, the condition of bond was the parents' cooperation with and following DFAC's direction. But of course, they weren't taken into custody until February 1st. So I guess my question, well, maybe you don't know. Maybe Detective Dunham knows. Where were the children between May and February 1st?
The 3 boys were with Miss Clintona Daniels, is what I was told, and Tamara was in DFAC's custody.
And who, the 3 other kids were with whom?
Mrs. Clintona Daniels.
And Clintona Daniels is what to the family?
Relative to Mrs. Demons.
And to say that the other Tamara is in DFAC's custody, so we don't know where she actually is. She's not with a family member, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, no.
Judge, obviously my client is still under oath if you want to ask him, but he's indicated to me that all 4 children are together with the guardian.
Okay, so Tamara is technically in DFAC's custody, but is with the same guardian.
That's correct. And the parents have been working with him the entire time with DFACs.
Okay. So I'm sorry, Mr. Williams, I wanted to get some clarification on that in my mind before I let you tell me why I ought to bind it over.
Yes, Judge. Both counsel for each of the defendants sort of picked at different things. Well, there's no reason to think she was in that much pain. She's getting around. It's a femur, Judge. It's the largest bone in your body. It's a weight-bearing bone. Any break is going to be excruciatingly painful. And the child didn't go through it once, but twice, that she had a completely healed injury, which goes to the idea of neglect. This wasn't, oh my gosh, COVID, what do we do? We're not sure, let's figure it out. They let that child suffer once and were willing to do it a second time. And pain patches aren't going to get to it. And when we don't have the money to go to the hospital, it doesn't prevent you from calling 911. And we don't know how we're going to pay for the bills. Doesn't obviate your obligation to help. No one's accusing this family of intentional neglect. No one's accusing them of breaking the bone, at least at this point. The question is, does it shock the consciousness that you would let a child, your child, wheel themselves about in a hotel room with a broken bone because you don't quite know what to do or it might be too expensive?
Well, I think you might be overly fair with that characterization. It's not a question whether it shocks the conscience, it's a question whether there's probable cause of neglect.
Fair enough, but the idea of neglect, of negligence is sort of like it's an inaction that you should have taken, that everyone will recognize as a reasonable reaction. And that their neglect is only reinforced by the fact the child's got a fungus on her feet. That's not ashiness, that's not dry feet, it's fungus, which only happens and covers the whole foot over a long period of time because the child's neglected. The family failed to take reasonable steps to care for their child, supported by low weight, supported by child couldn't remember the last time she was in a school. I get there wasn't live school, and I get it's hard to get enrolled, but all of those things go to neglect, and further supported by the idea that the family had money for a birthday party. They could buy pizza, they could buy balloons, but they couldn't call the doctor. They could call the uncle for a birthday, but not to have him come check out the daughter. All of that is flat out negligent, and I'm asking the court to bind over both of these warrants as alleged as cruelty in the second for each defendant.
All right.
And if I may just briefly.
Very.
Just address the fungus. Fungus can appear as ashiness.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about fungus, okay? All right, here's my ruling. I think this is a very close call, and the reason is because first of all, let me be clear about this. I think that the facts available to law enforcement at the time they took out these warrants, objectively, make out probable cause. They were right to seek the warrants, and the warrants were probably issued. However, I'm also mindful that it's a negligence case, and that necessarily requires taking in a lot of circumstances, and I'm very attuned to this idea that people are struggling, they're living in a hotel room, 4 kids. The birthday party doesn't mean anything to me. It's not like a birthday party or doctor. That's not a real choice in that situation. Even some of what I consider more tangential things like, the underwear, the fungus, that kind of stuff, in any household, even a better resourced family of that size with kids of this age. This is an 11-year-old. There's things that are not necessarily by themselves indicative of negligence. You have to put all of them together to make out the case. So I'm very mindful of the weight of economic necessity that rests on this family as a whole. And I think that's very relevant to the question of negligence because, we're talking about criminal negligence here. So is it past that threshold? I think, broken femur, don't go immediately to the hospital. That's significant. What tips me over to decide that the negligence here does rise to criminal negligence is the repeated nature of this. And I understand Ms. Lane's argument, and Mr. Lewis touched on this too, the idea that, well, she's not in writhing pain for 2 solid weeks. It's not like that, and I get that. But still, it's a broken femur, second time, with other indications that this rises to the level of criminal negligence. All that said, I don't think they're a threat to the children. I think they need to continue to follow DFAC's, whatever we do on bond here, continue to follow the DFAC's directions and requirements of the bond conditions. But I do find that there is probable cause to bind it over as charged. And if anyone needs to be heard on bond, I'll do that now.
Judge, we would respectfully ask to be heard on bond.
All right.
I think you can see that my client, in fact, does have a bond. Obviously, he's testified to a number of things. He's not working right now because he's been in custody for the last 6 weeks, but I'm gonna ask the court to consider a signature bond. I don't ask for many signature bonds, but you've heard the economic situation. That's really what we've been talking about. I don't know that a $1,500 bond helps them very much. I think it's because he may have to post the whole bond in its entirety. If you give him less than $1,000, if you give him $900, the bondsman doesn't go on it. If you give him a $1,500 bond, he has to have the $150, and he still has to have somebody sign for him. And I don't know if there's necessarily anybody to sign for him. Obviously, you've heard what their struggles were prior to the arrest warrant coming out. So I'm gonna seriously ask the court to consider a bond, a signature bond. If the court is not amenable to a signature bond, I would respectfully ask for a bond in the amount of maybe $500, because obviously I think he's going to have to post the bond in its entirety. A $4,500 bond is the same thing as a $500 bond. If you have to come up with the money, I don't know that there's anybody else to sign for them to get them out. There was nobody else to help with children. Obviously, there's somebody that took the children, but I don't know if that person may have just taken the children so that they don't go into defects and go with somebody else. That person may not have been the type of person that you call and will put their name on a bond for you. I'm going to respectfully ask the court for a signature bond, or if the court is not comfortable with a signature bond, ask for a bond amount of $500 for one felony charge that was found over. Thank you, Judge.
All right. Ms. Lane?
Yes, Your Honor, and we're actually in the same position. Ms. Demas does have a bond in the amount of $5,700. Obviously, it can be posted to full bond, and they have been sitting since they were taken into custody 3 weeks ago. understand Mr. Williams is probably gonna raise the argument of their flight risk because they were aware that there was a warrant, back, early November, late October. At least Mr. Broadnax was aware that there was a warrant, and I'm not gonna dispute whether or not there was communication, I'm sure the court can infer that there was some type of communication between the two, and they both might have known that there was a warrant out. Given that they had the 4 kids, they were trying to, get everything together, getting evicted. Mr. Broadnax testified he was scared and he did not know what to do. I don't think that that's indicative of them being a flight risk and not appearing in court, because we're here now. Certainly what they don't want to do is be rearrested. And then, while they're trying to work a case plan, trying to get their kids back, trying to get back on their feet, they're here in Gwinnett, they're in constant communication with DFAC. So and I certainly, and I understand what concerns that Mr. Williams would raise, but I just dispute that those are actual concerns. As Mr. Lewis is requesting, that was my same thought, a signature bond, given that, they don't really have a history. They do have ties to the community. They're here. And Gwinnett is home. Every hotel that they moved in, it was Gwinnett. Their families here. They're trying to get their kids back. They're embedded with, DFACs, and working with Gwinnett County DFACs. So I'm asking the court to, I'm respectfully asking the court to issue a signature bond. Certainly I understand if the court takes a position, if the court does reduce the bond that they currently have, to give a, $500 bond or so, but, that's still going to be difficult for them to post, even if the court gives them a $250 bond, taking in light that there's going to be fees on top of that amount. It's going to be difficult for them to post, but, just given their whole circumstance and situation and the fact that they have, DFACs in place to deal with the situation that they're currently in, I think that they are candidates for a signature bond.
All right, I got it. Mr. Williams?
Judge, Ms. Demus has no prior history. Mr. Broadnax, history dates back to 95, drugs and guns, 2000 trafficking cocaine, 2003 fleeing, a civil battery 2004, and a whole host of misdemeanors between here and there that are not relevant. You've heard more about this case than nearly everyone I could think of. I trust your judgment to know what the bond amount should be.
All right. Well, that's concerning, of course, about Mr. Broadnax's past. But, and I get the argument that basically Ms. Lane highlighted that you would make, and I'll consider that you made it since you mentioned it before, knowing that there's a warrant in place and not coming in earlier. However, given all the circumstances, I am going to allow them a signature bond. It's going to be subject to the conditions they already have, which means that they have to defer to DFACs, take direction from DFACs with respect to what, in other words, what DFAC says goes. All right? Let you conclude us on that matter.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.